you all here today. This is what we're going to talk through today. Andrew was first going to share a little bit about like big picture. It's been a hard year for the church, and like what does that look like moving forward. I was going to share some EMP updates, what we've been up to the past year, give space for each of you to talk about what your church has been able to do or not been able to do with schools and community in the past year. And then hopefully brainstorm a little bit about what engagement with kids will look like this summer and next school year. Of course, we know that plans are hard to make now, so we write them in pencil and we hope for the best. So Andrew, go ahead and share.
Yeah, as Justin and I were chatting, I think it's just wanted to get a pulse. I think it's EMP. When we started, the mission has always been to help connect churches, and then we ended up adding community organizations or other organizations on there because we are finding businesses, Fresno State students, right? Anybody that wants to partner at a school, we're glad to do it. But our heartbeat and what we don't want to ever get away from is connecting the church to serve. And this has just been a year that has really, pushed a lot of extremes, I think, in many ways. So I think it's pushed us technology wise, right? So some of your churches weren't doing live streaming, and like 2 weeks in, they need to figure this out. So they're figuring out the technology side of it. I think, we've been pushed, and this like everything's political. So whether it's masks, it's vaccines, do you gather, do you not? Like that's really pushed the churches. I know I talked to so many pastors that are just like so exhausted, where like every conversation they have is they're either the best or they are the worst and they're leaving. And it could be the same day they get the email, you guys are bowing to the powers and we're leaving, or you guys are, there's just no right or wrong. They're going to get an email from the same side or from the opposite sides the same day for no matter what they say. And then I think it's an interesting season for the church as we're starting to come back. What is the volunteer base going to look like? What is the attendance going to be? So, I think just to acknowledge, I think on our end, we're just praying deeply for the church. We know the organized people of God, and then just the lay people of God are central to what God wants to do in this world. And so we're cognizant just in this moment that this is a tough season for churches and for pastors. And then I think as we think about, EMP exists to help really mobilize the church. We just want to be thoughtful and also check in of how do we help churches better do that in this new season. So, from our Saturday sports side, we've traditionally had, up to 20 or 30 different Saturday sports going where church volunteers are serving every week. That may be a reality coming back. It may not. So we're going to have to adapt our programming, adapt to the different ways that we pull in volunteers for sports. And then as you think about literacy, is the volunteer base, are they willing? Are they ready? Or how are they feeling about COVID? How are the schools feeling about it? There's so many different reactions there. But I think for this piece, I'd just love to do a little conversation. How has like COVID been for your church? Is there a win, and is there maybe a struggle there that you'd be willing to share? And I think just, in my role, I'd love to, I just see this as a little place of listening to, how have you perceived COVID and your kind of church reality? So I'll just open it up there.
I'll go. I don't know what I'm saying, but I think our church has done a good job trying to navigate all the different feelings of don't open, you're evil, you're not, you're great. I think it's been challenging, but I think they've done a good job in just making all options available for people so they could kind of do what they want. So I think that's been good. Just being back together, we were in the church building this last Sunday, and I tell you what, it was just everybody was just thrilled to be there, and it was wonderful. So I'm praying that it goes back, and praying the politics don't affect moving forward, because division seems to be the key word of the year. And I just, I'm praying for just unity in all aspects of our church and our world. So
Yep. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, I think North Point did a good job kind of pivoting and doing what was best for everyone, and acknowledging all the feelings from different members. So they started out online with 2 different services, but they also added, sorry, allergies. They also added hosts and hostesses to greet people as they came online, which was kind of cool. And they pivoted outside under what one of our pastors calls the tabernacle. We had big tents and lights, and so you could attend outside. You could bring your lawn chairs and sit way in the back, or sit up in front. Sorry. And just within the last 2 weeks, they added 2 indoor services. So they still have online available, outside, and then 2 services inside. Not only that, but all the, yearly type of functions that they used to provide, they had to change with that. There's a Christmas women's gathering that they do with a lot of vendors, and they usually do it inside. And this year, everything was outside and pushed out to the parking lot with heaters. And so it still felt, communal, but just making it safe for everybody. So they've really come up with some unique ideas to kind of keep the momentum of those activities going, so that people still feel connected. I think their focus is really keeping people connected. We did Bible studies via Zoom or in small groups in somebody's backyard. They tried to navigate similarly to how they always have, but in a safe sort of way. So they really had to get out of the box, and I think they did a good job with that.
Cool. Thanks.
Our church has 4 different congregations under the umbrella of Butler Church. And so each one of those congregations has functioned a little differently through this. We have 2 English, 1 Hispanic, and 1 Southeast Asian congregation. And the 2 English-speaking ones started yesterday in the actual church building, which was wonderful. Just like what Carol was saying, people were so excited to see each other. It was just wonderful. The Hispanic pastor has a lot of health issues, so he is not going to be on campus for a long time yet. And the Southeast Asians went all the way through COVID meeting outside, even cold winter. So we have different levels of
tolerance.
Yeah. So I think our church is doing okay, though. Otherwise, I think they're doing okay. The politics, I think, is probably within each congregation. They deal with different kind of political views. We've had just a tad of that, but not a whole lot. And those people that have issues, they've kind of disappeared. So and that means that's 3 out of 50. So less than 10%, but still, you hate to lose anybody. But it's such a what do you call it? It's just such a hot button issue, how you feel about all of those kinds of things, masks, social distancing, etc. So
I was reading in Ephesians this morning about Paul addressing the church and the Jews and Gentiles, and how really he was addressing that God was making them a whole new unit as believers. And I believe that can come out of this, that those who are going to be strong in their faith can rise up and really cross the lines of that division. But it's going to take us being strong and having a voice and standing up. But it concluded my Bible study with Ephesians 3:20. where God is able to do exceedingly abundantly, far more than we could ever ask or imagine, according to his power that works in us. And so I just believe that this is a day and a time that God is calling us to stand up and have a great faith and exhibit that faith and be a people that are willing to embrace others, maybe not their viewpoints, but love others. And I know that that for me is what Kirk Elementary is all about, that we love those kids and we love their families. And one really good thing about this school connection online is that it's given us a glimpse of going into families' homes. And I can say that I have really experienced support as a teacher from parents who are willing to rise up to get their kids online, to take their computers, to get them fixed, to do whatever it takes to help partner with us. And that has been such a positive thing. I think also in our church, having to go online has given us a whole new venue of people to reach worldwide. And so it's really been watching God work through what we might see as difficult or impossible, but God is doing amazing things that might not have been done before. That said, we still need the community of face-to-face. And I was so privileged to take my mom back to church after she was quarantining probably 14 months for the first time on Easter Sunday, and watching people come up and say, I'm so glad to see you, and embracing and hugging. And the tears were flowing from me, because there's nothing online that can replace that human being connection. And I felt the same way last week when kids came back to school. We can't hug them, but boy, are we happy to see them, and just to feel like, things are going to be more normalized. So I think it's a real pivotal time for churches and schools and our country. But as we continue to put our eyes on Jesus, and realize that he's in control and he's above our circumstances, I feel there's hope.
That's good. Preaching it over there, Gwen. I love it. Yeah, I don't know, Sarah, if you're there, if you want to share from neighborhood side, but yeah, no, it's really good. Oh, there, you there? I don't know if you had mom duties.
Yeah, it's popping in and out. So I'll just share just briefly for neighborhood church. We are a very small church, so I think it's been maybe a little bit easier for us. A lot, not all, but a lot of our church members live in the same neighborhood. We've done for most of the year online. But because we kind of live near each other, we've still been able to be connected. And then we did our first in-person gathering outside on Easter Sunday, and that was really nice to get together. So yeah, I think it's been okay for our church. More kids.
Yeah. And I'm part of a church in Tower, church plant. We launched 5 weeks before COVID hit. And so we had 5 Sundays in person and then COVID hit. So we had no real sense of identity, not a really strong sense of identity. We've been able to gain folks from online space somehow. And then we did on our front lawn, we did our Easter service at our house in our front yard. And we had, 20 some odd kids in the backyard and adults in the front. So that was fun. So we're looking, I think we were at Heaton Elementary, Fresno Unified School, and then once those shut down, we don't have a space, so we've been online. I think we're toying with some other options here and trying to work out leases and contracts and stuff with either Fresno Unified. There's a dance studio next door, or maybe we do we're renting the back space of the Review coffee shop. So maybe kids are at our house and adults there, or we're trying to figure it out. So it's complicated being a church plant, but yeah, so it was fun on Easter to see folks that I've never met in person, but they're part of this church for the last year. So that was cool. Well, I think, no, on EMP's end, we exist to support churches. So as you have conversations with your pastors, other church leaders, EMP really wants to help them serve and get them connected. We work with every church. So whether they were anti-COVID, whether they're really safe, like we're going to work with them, because we think that that element of service is that unity piece that you were talking about, Gwen. Like we may not see eye to eye on every issue, but like through being the hands and feet of Jesus, the unity that John was talking about, or Jesus talks about in John, is on display. Like the hands and feet are seen through love and action. One of the things we're doing, I'll put it in the chat. We did a class also on race. That's been a big conversation even this week, right? Is more trials, more violence that's being talked about. So how do we talk about race as Christians, and how do we find unity there? So we did a class and we wrapped up a couple weeks ago, but we had folks from 20 different churches a part of this class talking about race in America, and what is a Jesus looking response to this conversation, not just a social justice conversation. What does it look to be like Jesus in this space? So so that was really cool. So I think EMP, just iterate, like, pray for your pastors, pray for our churches. I sit with in a couple of different church groups, and I sat with a pastor who has lost 60% of his congregation. And he was cautious, and his folks were really not liking that. And so he's like basically have to start over. And so you see some churches have grown, and we celebrate with that. And then we some churches that are devastated after this. And so praying for our pastors, it's a tough gig. I do not desire to be a pastor during this season. And so pray for them. And then as you come across conversations, we're glad to support whatever way we can and be a resource. So just wanted to offer that out there.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And it's helpful to hear where all the churches are at, like across the city, and where I'm excited for you all who got to meet this last Sunday, and hope that continues. Yeah.
Andrew, how much of his congregation did you say was gone?
60. 60.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's devastating for a pastor.
Yeah, and he was, part of it was, I think he was really concerned by stuff in that January 6th uprising, and so he was talking about it, and again, that the politics, we so divide ourselves now as a church. So we're churches of Republicans, or we're churches of progressives or Democrats. Like, how do we find unity at the cross and not our political allegiance or our news channel preference or whatever, so I think that's just that's the thing the church is going to wrestle with for these next decades. This is a real discipleship challenge, to how do you as a pastor hold that together, again, pray for our pastors.
I found that with some of my friends that I've had for over 60 years, 50 years, whatever, and we're on different sides of the fence, and it's interesting. I mean, you really have to navigate that and say, okay, what is the priority here? I mean, here we've loved each other for all these years, and now all of a sudden this is going to put a wedge between us. You really have to be very careful about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think another aspect of this is the generational aspect, and we're going to lose our churches if we don't reach that next generation. So what I see as EMP reaching out and really being a light to this next generation is really going to help build churches. But again, we have to get the message out to these young families that church is important, that it's a part of what children should be experiencing, because especially after COVID, we've become lazy, we've become homebodies. And now to make that extra effort to get them back in church, we need good programs at Church for Kids, and we need to be reaching out to these young families. So I applaud EMP for the service component. I think that's critical.
Yeah, thanks, Gwen. That's a good point. Yeah. All really good thoughts. And I'm personally in a season of potentially finding a new church. So that's also, there's some transition at my church that like now I've visited a few different ones, and it's been kind of fun to see different churches, but also, yeah, trying to find the balance of like church shopping is weird because you're like, ultimately this I shouldn't be shopping. I should just like plug in and commit. But anyways, so yeah, it's a season of transition for lots of folks.
Yep.
Well, thank you. That was a good, rich conversation. I appreciated hearing from all of you. Thanks, Andrew. Just wanted to give a few like big picture EMP updates. Most of you already know all these things. Some of maybe don't know everything. So just a few updates on how our past year has been, and then I'll open it up to you to share too. So the bulk of what I've been doing is the virtual literacy mentoring. Those are what our numbers were at as of February. I just like this photo. There's just the relationships that have been built even via an online setting. Just kids who really still appreciate and love the one-on-one time. And then also in this photo, you'll notice he's working on some like higher vocabulary words. These aren't sight words like you always see. So we've actually branched out a little more in the online space, like even work with some high schoolers through group homes, and then some older elementary students, just as those were in some of the cases, those were who signed up. And so we've like worked with volunteers and tutors to work with some older kids as well. And I think kind of like Gwen mentioned earlier, a big win has been getting to know kids' families as well. And that was always like a year ago, that was one of my goals, was like, how can volunteers get to know families? Like they know teachers and they know kids, but they don't know families. And then COVID happened and now we know families a little better. So I think that was one win of the virtual setting. Also from the virtual setting, like initially trying to get lots of different kids logged in on this program called Tutorfly was very challenging. We were calling families like, type in this website. They're like, where do you type? What's a website? Where do I type that in? Get the / like just limited. I think I personally hadn't realized how so many of our families had like zero concept of how to work a computer. And so from that, we launched a parent digital literacy class, and actually all in Spanish, since that was the families who had signed up. And so this was, I know I don't think any of you read Spanish, but this is a flyer about that class and some quotes from the class. So we're doing our second round now with our staff, with our coworker, Susie is leading that. And that's just been a neat space to be into, to be able to, like from this, realizing like, oh, we need to help parents figure out how to work a computer better. And so they've
just thrown in there too, it's like watching from that class, I think Susie said 4 or 5 folks bought computers that they didn't have. And then we had folks that like had a computer and literally didn't know how to turn it on. Like they had it at their house. Hold on, I'm talking. They had it at their house and like just never had turned it on. And then, there's a mix of like feedback from helping with their kids to also like, this helps me in my career. Like I know how to, so you think about the long term, like if we didn't have access to the internet, what does that limit us as people for our own self-development? So it's just so fun to see.
Yeah. And like that digital divide existed before COVID, but I don't think we realized on such a level as we do now, so been neat to help with that and see more families be able to access things on the internet as well. One other thing we've helped with is churches across the city have hosted learning hubs on their site. So they opened up as a space for like some of their kids that go to their church, but also neighborhood kids, for them to be able to come and do their online learning there at the church to support families who like need, who maybe didn't have babysitting or didn't have great Wi-Fi access or just needed somewhere for their kids to go to safely do remote learning. And so churches have been hosting those, but we've just helped with like volunteers and resources as we're able to. And I think that's just been a neat, tangible way that the church has been able to support kids and get to know more families in the neighborhood too.
Did you say how many hubs you have serviced?
What was that?
How many of the hubs have you had, or do you have across town?
Yeah, there's like 6 of them right now that we've been, there may be more that we don't know about, but there's been 6 of them that we've been working with closely.
Do they stay pretty full capacity? Or do they take new
Yeah.
kids?
They're
Is-
usually, most of them I think are like 15 to 20 kids or so, because they're trying to maintain distance and I think and volunteer capacity and like depend on how many rooms you have, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and then one more slide. And so you've probably seen and you knew we got some Fresno Bee boxes and so helped work with Reading Heart to place those around town. And people, so this was a Fresno Bee box and now it's all painted. People are so creative. They came out so cute. If you follow us on Facebook, you've seen some of those pictures. And then most recently, some of our volunteers came who have been working with kids online, created little bags for them of different academic activities, and then are passing that or dropping them off at the families' homes. So it's materials the kids can use during session, like some flashcards, some booklets, some whiteboards, all that kind of stuff. And I think that also the neat part about that is they get to meet the kid in person briefly too, like go to their home. Here you go. Again, building more relationship. So those are a few just EMP updates, but wanting to hear from you. So like, what is these two questions? What has contact with your school this past year looked like? And then if there's been other ways that your church has supported the school or neighborhood, feel free to share. So any thoughts on if you have been with us in any of those things or working on other things within your church and school?
Well, I'd just like to give a shout out to the literacy mentors volunteering through EMP. They are so caring and compassionate, and they have taken it upon themselves that when one of our students couldn't hear well in their home environment, they wanted to make sure he had headphones and were willing to donate to get those themselves. I mean, to me, that is just such a heart for what we're really all about. It's not just caring for the literacy aspect, which is important, but it's caring for the whole child. And you've just fostered such an environment of compassion that it really is just a privilege. And I'm really picky. I work at Kirk and I do reading intervention, and I'm really picky about who I want to go into parents' homes, because we are representing the school, we're representing the district, and I want to make sure that parents are seeing the very best. And I've never had a qualm about anybody connected with EMP. I feel like you do such a good job of screening and training and making your program so valuable that it's really an honor to have all these mentors in homes with students. And boy, is it the highlight. We have a combo team of two young gentlemen, and they are just such a role model for our young boys that need that so desperately. So I just can't thank you all enough. You have really helped us. Our data last year showed how much the sight words and learning that has increased their capacity to read and understand. And I'm confident that that's going to happen again this year. So we have remained online with our Read Fresno and our literacy mentors this year, and we will do so for the remainder of the year. But our superintendent has come out saying that we're all headed back to school next year. And so I embrace that as EMP is headed back to school next year. So I appreciate your patience with this year. It's been a lot to maneuver at school. For example, we have such limited amount of students we can have in the classroom. We're cleaning our little hearts out every time we turn around. And it's just a lot of accountability on who's on campus this year. So I appreciate that Janessa has been so willing to work with us and say, no, it's okay, we'll just stay online this year. But we're truly looking forward to return to as was next year.
Good. That's good news. Yeah, thanks, Gwen. Thank you. I appreciate all.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what Gwen said. I have a very good friend that said, an assistant to one of the board members for the Fresno Unified, and we had lunch last week, and she said too, I think we'll be back in the fall. And because when I reached out, I have a very small team of just 6, and when I reached out to them in March about doing online support or in person, they all decided they wanted to wait until kids got back into the classrooms. And we service 3 teachers at Fig Garden, and they're all very veteran teachers. So even to teach virtually was a learning curve for them, and then to have an additional support team coming in and saying, okay, we want to take some kids, was kind of overwhelming for them. So we just said, we're going to back off for a while until you get settled. We did have one mentor that decided to mentor virtually, and she's loving it, and which is awesome. But we're looking forward to going back in the fall. I did reach out again when schools started to partially open, and asked one of our teachers, can we help with welcoming students or whatever you'd like us to do? And she said, there will be no one allowed on campus. So with Fig Garden, there's no support, anything allowed on campus, according to her. So we're just still waiting to get back in there with those little faces next fall. And I'm eager to get going.
Okay, I'll go next. I was fortunate to be on campus last year in March, and the vice principal came up to me and said that we're going to make an announcement with the staff here in a minute that we're shutting everything down. So I was actually there when it was all happening, and I feel like I have a really special relationship with the principal. She became a Christian about a year ago, and that has just like solidified our connection. So it's just been really sweet. So I've stayed in contact with her throughout the whole thing. And she's very eager to share if there's an opportunity, if there's something they need. I mean, we did, and I can't say no. So if I can't find people to do it, I just call a few of my friends and we kind of do stuff. But we provided popsicles for kids and hot chocolate for little incentives for their drive-throughs when to acknowledge their good attendance online. We did, when back to school, we did boxes of school supplies for the kids. We just been little incentives for the teachers. Life group did notes for the teachers, but we've been doing things throughout. There was a point at which I was going, okay, I've lost my volunteer base because everybody's like, I didn't have any literacy mentors. We probably had 20 literacy mentors, and they really didn't want to do it online. And so I felt like I was kind of alone in all of it, and I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And as things were coming back again, the last couple of months, the principal reached out and says, do you think you can get backpacks for our kids? And I'm going, great. How am I going to do that? Because there's none in Walmart, I mean, they don't have back to school supplies right now. So, I did some research, and then I reached out to Andrew and said, help, I don't know what to do. Because I didn't really feel like the church was so overwhelmed with just functioning as they function or trying to figure out what to do. I just didn't reach out to them. But then Andrew and I met with the missions director and his admin, and they were just so eager to support whatever we're doing down at Susan B. So that was so encouraging. And they helped buy a bunch of backpacks. So we supplied a bunch of backpacks. The principal asked if we wanted to come down and make signs and greet the kids when they came back. So I went down last week, or a couple of volunteers went down last week, Tuesday and Thursday, and we'll go again this week. I guess different schools have different rules or follow the rules differently, but so anyway, that's been pretty sweet. I want to support the whole online literacy mentoring and mentoring throughout this year, and we do have a couple people who have done that through Janessa, but most of our people are really not interested in doing it online. And honestly, when I reached out to one of the first grade teachers last year, she said, honestly, the kids who need the most help right now are not showing up. The parents are not supporting it, or they don't respond when it's time to meet. So that's, I think, been really frustrating for the teachers. And so we're just trying to figure out how to support in whatever way we can. You know, what can we do to just be available and be supporting the school? So yeah, that's kind of been my year-long story. And I'm curious, you said things should be going back next year. Have they said anything about volunteers on campus next year? Has anything come from the district regarding that?
I just know our superintendent made an announcement last week that the plans are to be back at school next fall. So I would assume plans will be coming forward, but I know our teachers are really appreciating the help and excited to have you back. So I can't say for sure, but I would think we'll be back. So
for me, I felt like, well, I watched the teachers struggle trying to do online learning, and I watched my grandchildren it was really hard. And I couldn't, for myself, I didn't want to put the kids online any longer during the day. So I think now that they're back on campus a couple of days a week, for me, it will be easier to connect. And then the principal also mentioned a mom who just reached out to her and said, I can't do this parenting. I can't do this anymore. She just felt desperate. And so the principal mentioned her to us, and it happened to be a family that the kids went to Saturday sports. So that's going to be an easy connection. So I think just the ability to be there and to see the needs, and for the staff to be able to say, here's a need. And then for us to be able to say, how can we meet that need? So I think the connection is so valuable.
Yeah, I have teachers all the time that are saying, can you fit in one more student who really needs help with a tutor? And Janessa has been great to make that happen. I don't know how she does it, but we appreciate it. And I also want to say a thank you to EMP for bringing teacher care packages to our school. That was at such a needed time. You have no idea how hard it is to be told one day you're going home and you're going to learn to teach from home and your world's upside down, and just the amount of time that it takes me double the time to plan a lesson now. And I know that those teacher packages were just so appreciated, because sometimes you wonder when you're having trouble getting kids online and lessons aren't going how you want, and you feel like the learning is half the pace of what you had before. To just know that somebody's there behind you means so much. And another shout out was that I had a family who was being taken care of by an aunt who had cancer, 6 children in the home, and no air conditioning. And I reached out to EMP, and they were able to help get some window units installed. And that is such a blessing, not just to that family, but to me, and to see that EMP really puts hands and feet to what they believe in, and what a difference that made for that family.
Really great.
And even on that story, that was Daniel connected through a resident who had those window units. So it was even it wasn't like which it's great even with us as church volunteers that serve, but like it was a fellow resident supporting another resident, right? So just cool to see the sharing of resources.
Nice.
Carol knows this, but we did get okay to go back to Saturday sports. So they did allow us to start that process. So there may be some volunteers. And it seems like within Fresno Unified, at least on the side that we talked to, they just said, well, just basically work with your principal to see what they prefer for cleaning, whatever their protocols are, just follow those. And so I would imagine, especially come to the fall, it'll probably be that same kind of format. I would assume they're going to say all hands on deck. We need get these kids back up to speed. But I think, as we have seen, Janessa knows, like every principal is like, I want this application, or whatever, so that's like, we're going to do our back end stuff and make sure everybody's good. But, every site has their own kind of process and format.
Yeah, Carol, I was going to ask if you'd share. I feel like you've just built such a good relationship with the principal. Like, how'd you how'd you do that? If you have any words of advice for the rest of us on how to build a strong relationship there.
It was totally a God thing. I don't know that anything that we did anything besides be the hands and feet of Jesus, and she saw it. And she was overwhelmed. It was, I don't know if it was her second year at Susan B when this, anyway, she just, at first she was so hesitant to have us there. In fact, we met with her when she was at another school, and I was like, I don't know if I like this lady. She doesn't like me, and she didn't want us there. So it was really, when she came to Susan B, I was really nervous, but we just kind of we were there and we were present, and she saw our hearts, and yeah, and then one day she said, "Can you come to my office?" And I was like, "Oh no." she just said, I accepted Christ. She said, I became a Christian, and she was talking about how amazing she felt and how peaceful she felt. And then she shared with me a few months later that the vice principal came up to her and asked her if she was on new medication. And she says, "No, it's Jesus." So it was just, and I think that's one of the reasons, I've wanted to try to be there for her as much as possible. And I mean, we'll share devotionals, and she'll talk about her Bible study, and it's just been a neat process. But there's nothing specific we did except be there and be available and love the kids. And she saw that. So that's it. No other tricks. No tricks, no secrets.
I guess the secret is to be Carol.
No,
Just
Yeah.
just to serve, servant's heart. And we had a lot of people on campus, so and she saw them all. She saw their hearts to love the kids.
yeah, any other thoughts on this past year on ways you've been connected with the school, or challenges in being connected with the school too?
I was just going to add one thing. We also just found out that there's no SBAC testing this year, praise God.
Yeah.
But teachers are really concerned about how far behind students are. So I really believe that any efforts you put forth next year are going to be met with open arms, because we're all concerned about our students being below grade level and how are we going to catch them up. And the program that Literacy Mentors provides is such high quality and really works, and teachers are embracing that. So I don't think you'll have any trouble getting back into campuses and just being overwhelmed with the needs. So.
I was gonna ask Gwen, I heard that from somebody else. Will there be some level of benchmarking? I mean, probably iReady or something like that. It'd be interesting, you and then maybe Janessa, you could reach out to a couple other sites if we could, if they'd be willing to share just what is some of the benchmarking of this year compared to other years, just so we know going into the fall. It'd be good to know.
We will be using iReady. And I believe that that's a more accurate measure right now, because that's been an expectation that students would be progressing through iReady. We all know that we've lost a lot of ground. And so to go in and take an SBAC that we haven't been able to prepare for, or just to show us how far behind we are, that's going to discourage parents. It's going to discourage students and teachers and admin. So I really applaud this decision as being a wise one, but we will have that iReady as a benchmark, so we can certainly get data from that. It won't be as specific as we have with SBAC, but it will show something of where we're at.
Yeah. Do you know, so the last topic I wanted to talk about was just summer, with kids being so far behind and missing, behind academically and even social emotionally, not having been able to interact with friends so much. As things start to open up, it feels like we could do more this summer, and maybe should do more this summer because there's such a gap. So any thoughts? I don't know, Gwen, if they've made, I don't think any summer school decisions have been made, but you could share about that. And then also if anyone else has had thoughts about how they or their church might be able to support kids this summer.
I don't know of any summer school plans yet. As you said, we're just writing everything in pencil. I will find out though what's in the works. I think if summer sports can continue, that's really going to be beneficial. The little libraries, that's beneficial. I don't know. I'm going to check on that. Do you think you would have volunteers that would want to work through the summer? Because perhaps we could propose that as something that even if there's not summer school, that if they want to continue meeting in the summer and they've established those relationships with parents, that perhaps that's something we could continue to offer. I'm sure that would be welcomed by teachers. So I can ask if you think there's an interest in that, if there's volunteers.
Yeah, I definitely think I've thought about throwing that out to the current mentors that they can continue to meet with kids virtually throughout the summer if the family's open to it, even just once a week or something. But also looking at, if people are open to it, trying to even do some on-site things as well.
I'm toying with the idea of Saturday sports and what does that look like, and will I have volunteers that want to, are they going to require the kids to wear masks out on the playground, and what's that going to look like? And then the whole idea of the literacy too. So one of the thoughts I had was, and I'm going to try to show this picture, even though it has graffiti on it. One of the life groups last year for Serve Day, like right before, or right as everything was shutting down, they built these big picnic tables. They were able to deliver one, but then school was shut down and nobody was really using them except people coming in there and writing on them. But they've got one more that they're going to deliver. And I thought, well, maybe we could do even a couple times a month, come out there and just not call it Saturday sports, but more of a reading and just engaging. And plus, I'm sorry, but it gets so hot by 9 o'clock in the summer outside. I don't handle that very well, but I'd love to do something where we're connecting with the kids, maybe in a different way. I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. So I might want to brainstorm that with you guys, because I think we could get some people out there. I don't think we'll ever go back to weekly Saturday sports just because it became so difficult to get consistent volunteers every week, and we had so many kids. So, but I do want to do something. So maybe that would be something to think about for the summer. So I'm open to those ideas.
I think it's important when you said that, Jenna said that there were mentors working with older kids. I think it'd be really important to continue that throughout the summer, because these are the kids that don't want to admit that they need help with reading, that have such a low self-esteem. And that's when all of the, they act out and they become behavior problems, or they go within and they don't socialize. So if you could somehow get those mentors to continue with those older kids, and then when they go back to school in the fall with all their peers, they may feel a little bit better about, what they've achieved so far. So if you can get those mentors to continue that work, I think that's really important.
I just had a thought. What if you did like a story time, and you did it by grade level, and you had volunteers go out, or, grouped grade levels, and whatever story we choose, we also give them a paper version of it and maybe a little bag with games. And I love your popsicle idea when it's hot. That would be awesome. Then you're giving them some tools. Another thing they loved was that sidewalk chalk. And if you can maybe have that in the bags with some words to practice, that would be kind of a really fun day. And kids like story time. So I think you might get a good turnout. I would do it during the week when principals are there or staff is on site, so that it's not extra having to connect on a weekend. But just a thought, I can see that being a fabulous turnout and really beneficial for kids.
Yeah, I like that. Good idea, Gwen. quick. Yeah, I like that idea. So on that note, we also recently, I talked to Faith, they're a local nonprofit that's branched out of North Mennonite Baptist Church, and they've been doing a summer.
Wait a minute. That's not a Baptist church. That's a Mennonite church. I'm gonna claim it.
Thank you. I said MB. I made the B Baptist. My bad.
I'm just teasing you.
They've been doing a summer program for like 10 years. And so they were sharing with me the model of how they set up their summer program and what they do throughout the summer. And they have lots of like agendas and schedules and permission slips. But as I talked to them, we got us thinking about like what other groups already do a summer program and how could we steal what they're doing, or borrow some of their ideas and not have to recreate the wheel. So on Thursday, April 29th, we'll have just a short 1-hour Zoom meeting where Care Fresno, Face, and Willow Avenue Mennonite Church, not Mennonite Baptist, will all present what they've done in the summers with kids. And they all look a little bit different. Like Willow Avenue did something that was just drive-through, so not even on site, but it was like a pickup opportunity. So each of them will share what they did. And the idea is any church partners or any community groups that are thinking about working with kids this summer, you can come and listen in and maybe be inspired to do something yourself. So
Janessa, will we be able to have one of the gals from the library join that too?
yeah, that's a good
I
idea.
think that'd be good to throw that in too.
Mhm. All right, well, 10 o'clock, any final thoughts or things you didn't get to share or questions you didn't get to ask? All right, well, thank you. Thank you all for joining. It's nice to see all of you. And yeah, it's lots of good news that hopefully we can continue to work with kids next school year and even do some things throughout this summer. So stay in touch and appreciate each and every one of you and all you do for kids.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janessa.
Thank
You
you.
got your